that had watched humanity for 3,000 years. Their observation stations floated in the darkness behind Earth's moon, hidden from every telescope and satellite that humans had ever built. The pale blue aliens recorded everything. Every war, every invention, every rocket launch, every radio signal that escaped into space. High Arbiter stood in the council chamber of the Seven Worlds, his long fingers trembling slightly as they hovered over a simple red button. Around him sat the 6 other members of the Galactic Confederation, each representing a species that had joined the Empire over the past 10,000 years. "We have waited long enough," Counselor said. Her voice was cold and certain. "The humans have developed fusion power. They are building colonies on Mars. In another 100 years they will discover faster than light travel. We cannot allow this." Looked at the holographic display floating above the council table. It showed Earth in perfect detail. Blue oceans, green continents, swirling white clouds, 7 billion humans going about their daily lives, completely unaware that their extinction had already been decided. "The protocol is clear," another counselor added. "Any species that shows aggressive tendencies and advances too quickly must be eliminated. We have done this 17 times before. The humans are no different." But the humans were different. They just did not know it yet. 6 months earlier, a mining vessel called the Lucky Strike had been drilling into an asteroid in the outer solar system. Captain Danny Vance was a simple man who had spent 20 years hauling rocks through space. He never expected to find anything unusual. But on that day, his drill broke through into a hollow chamber that should not have existed. Inside the chamber was a device. It was clearly not human. The technology was thousands of years more advanced than anything on Earth. Danny called it in to mission control, and within a week, the greatest minds on the planet were studying the alien artifact. They learned 3 things very quickly. First, the device was a monitoring station, designed to watch Earth and transmit data somewhere far away. Second, it contained records of 16 other species that had been monitored in the same way. All 16 species were now extinct, wiped out by a weapon of tremendous power. Third, and most importantly, the device contained a countdown. Humanity had 18 months before the weapon would fire. Commander Lisa Grant remembered the day she was briefed on the situation. She sat in a concrete bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, surrounded by generals and scientists and world leaders. The President of the United States looked like he had not slept in days. "We cannot fight them," the lead scientist explained. "Their technology is too advanced. We cannot hide from them either. They have been watching us for 3,000 years. They know where we live, where we work, where we keep our weapons." "Then what can we do?" Lisa asked. The scientist paused. "We can leave." The plan was insane. It was impossible. It required every nation on Earth to work together in secret, building a fleet of ships large enough to carry the entire human population to another galaxy. It required new technology to be invented and perfected in less than a year. It required 8 billion people to abandon their homes, their history, and everything they had ever known. And somehow humanity did it. Lisa stood on the bridge of the starship Endurance, watching the final evacuation shuttles rise from the surface below. The planet was burning, not from alien weapons, but from the controlled destruction of everything humanity was leaving behind. Cities were demolished. Databases were wiped. Every trace of human technology was being erased. "All 12 colony ships have cleared the atmosphere," Lieutenant reported from her station. 8 billion souls accounted for. Lisa nodded. Her throat felt tight. She had been born in a small town in Kansas. She had learned to ride a bicycle on those streets. She had fallen in love for the first time under those stars, and now she would never see any of it again. "Chief Vance," she said, her voice steady despite the pain in her heart. "Status of the quantum fold drives." Danny Vance looked up from his engineering console. He was no longer a simple mining captain. The discovery he had made had changed everything, including him. "All systems green, Commander. We are ready to fold on your order." The quantum fold technology had been reverse-engineered from the alien monitoring station. It allowed a ship to bend space around itself, traveling millions of light years in an instant. More importantly, it left no trace, no radiation, no energy signature, nothing that the could track. "All ships, this is Commander Grant," Lisa said into the fleet-wide channel. "Initiate fold sequence on my mark. Destination, Andromeda staging point. May God watch over us all." She paused for one last look at Earth. The planet was beautiful even now, even burning, even abandoned. "Mark." The Endurance folded space and vanished. One by one, the other 11 colony ships followed. In less than 30 seconds, every human being in the solar system was gone. High Arbiter pressed the button. The extermination beam traveled from the weapon platform at nearly the speed of light. It struck Earth with enough force to crack the planet's crust and boil its oceans. Within minutes, the world that had given birth to humanity was nothing but molten rock and ash. Watched the destruction with satisfaction. "It is done," he announced to the Council. "The human threat has been eliminated." But something was wrong. The monitoring stations around Earth had gone silent moments before the beam struck. The expected death screams of 7 billion beings had not registered on any sensor. The planet's destruction had been too clean, too empty. "Arbiter," a technician said nervously, "we are not detecting any biological matter in the debris field. No bodies, no organic residue, nothing." Frowned. "That is impossible. Run the scan again." They ran it again, and again, and again. Each time the result was the same. Earth had been destroyed, but no humans had died. "They knew," Counselor whispered. "Somehow they knew we were coming." The council chamber fell silent. For the first time in 10,000 years, they had failed. They had destroyed a world, but their target had escaped. Somewhere in the void between galaxies, the human fleet sailed toward a new home. Lisa Grant stood at her window, watching the stars blur past as the Endurance traveled faster than light itself. "We made it," Danny said quietly, standing beside her. "We actually made it." Lisa did not smile. "This is not the end, Danny. This is just the beginning. We left everything behind. Our planet, our history, our dead." She turned to face him, and her eyes were hard with determination. "One day we will go back, and when we do, they will learn what happens when you try to exterminate humanity." The fleet sailed on through the darkness, carrying the last hope of the human race toward an uncertain future. 200 years passed in the Milky Way galaxy. They celebrated their victory over humanity for the first 10 years. They held parades and festivals. They erected monuments to High Arbiter, calling him the savior of galactic civilization. They told stories to their children about the dangerous humans who had almost threatened the peace of the universe. But by the 20th year, the celebrations had stopped. By the 50th year, the stories had changed. And by the 100th year, they had begun to feel something they had never felt before. Fear. Director stood before the new High Arbiter, his hands shaking as he delivered his report. "We have searched every corner of the solar system. We have analyzed every fragment of Earth's debris. We have scanned every asteroid, every moon, every patch of empty space." And the Arbiter demanded, "There are no human remains. Not a single body, not a single drop of blood, not a single strand of hair." Swallowed hard. "They were not on the planet when we destroyed it. They knew we were coming and they left." The Arbiter's face turned pale. "Where did they go?" "We do not know. Our sensors detected no ships. Our probes found no trails. It is as if 8 billion beings simply vanished into thin air." They expanded their search. They sent probe networks into every corner of the galaxy. They interrogated every species they had conquered. They spent trillions of credits and decades of effort looking for any sign of humanity. They found nothing. In the Andromeda Galaxy, 2 million light-years away, humanity was building a new civilization. Admiral Cole stood on the observation deck of the colony world called New Hope. He was 70 years old now, but the longevity treatments developed by human scientists had given him the body of a man half his age. Below him, a city of 2 million people spread across a valley that had been empty wilderness just 50 years ago. "The terraforming of the seventh planet is complete," his aide reported. "We now have 40 habitable worlds across the sector." Nodded, 40 worlds, 15 billion humans, and technology that advanced more in 2 centuries of focused effort than it had in 10,000 years of scattered development on Earth. "What about the fleet?" asked. 300 ships completed, another 400 under construction. The shipyards are running at full capacity. Turned to look at the stars. Somewhere out there, in a galaxy he could barely see with his naked eye, they were still searching, still afraid, still wondering where humanity had gone. Good, he thought, let them wonder. His daughter, Captain Cole, commanded the research vessel Quiet Dawn. At 35 years old, she had never seen Earth. She had been born on a colony ship during the Great Journey, and she had grown up hearing stories about a world she would never know. "Father," she said, entering the observation deck, "we have completed the mapping of the outer spiral arm. I wanted to show you what we found." She activated a holographic display. A star map appeared, showing thousands of solar systems spread across a vast region of space. 12 habitable planets, said. 6 of them have conditions almost identical to Earth. We could support another 50 billion people in this region alone. Studied the map and the indigenous life forms. Simple organisms only, no intelligent species, no civilizations to displace, smiled. "We can build without conquest, Father. We can grow without destroying." This had been the philosophy of the human colonies from the beginning. They had fled Earth not just to survive, but to become something better. They had seen humanity's wars and conflicts and judged them as violent savages. The humans had decided to prove them wrong. In 200 years, the colonies had not fought a single war. Not one human had killed another in conflict. Disputes were resolved through negotiation. Resources were shared equally. Technology was developed for the benefit of all, not the profit of a few. The humans had not forgotten their history. They remembered every war, every atrocity, every failure of their past, but they had learned from those failures instead of repeating them. Back in the Milky Way, a young named was assigned to a routine patrol mission in the outer reaches of the galaxy. He was barely an adult by his species standards, and this was his first assignment away from home. "Patrol Sector 7 is clear," he reported to his commander. "No anomalies detected." He was about to move on to Sector 8 when his sensors picked up something unusual. A small object floating in the void between stars. It was clearly artificial, but it did not match any known design. Adjusted his ship's course and approached the object carefully. It was a metal plaque, no larger than his hand, engraved with symbols he did not recognize. He brought the plaque aboard and scanned it with his translation software. The results made no sense. "Unknown language detected," the computer reported. "No match in database." But that was impossible. The database contained every language of every species in the galaxy, including all the human languages from before the extinction. This writing should have been translatable. Studied the symbols more closely. They were elegant and precise, clearly the work of an advanced civilization. But they were also unfamiliar, as if someone had created an entirely new writing system. He did not know it, but he was looking at a message written in a script that humans had developed after leaving Earth. A script designed specifically to be unreadable by technology. The message, if he could have read it, was simple. "We will return, and we will remember." Reported his discovery to his superiors. They examined the plaque and dismissed it as debris from the old Earth, somehow preserved in the vacuum of space. They filed it away and forgot about it. But did not forget. Something about that message haunted him. He kept a copy of the symbols in his personal files, studying them in his free time, trying to understand what they meant. Years passed, rose through the ranks of the military. He became a commander, then a director, then a senior advisor to the High Arbiter himself. And through all those years, he never stopped thinking about that strange plaque floating in the darkness. In the Andromeda colonies, Admiral Cole gathered his senior officers for a strategy meeting. "It has been 200 years," he said. "We have built our civilization, we have developed our technology, we have trained our soldiers. The question now is, what do we do next?" General, commander of the Colonial Defense Forces, spoke first. "They tried to exterminate us. They have done the same to 16 other species. They will continue doing it until someone stops them." "Agreed," said. "But we will not become what they feared we were. We will not commit genocide. We will not rule through fear." "Then what do you propose?" asked Doctor, the colony's chief scientist. Smiled. It was the smile of a man who had spent 2 centuries planning. "We propose to make friends." The plan he outlined was simple but bold. Humanity would return to the Milky Way, but not as conquerors. They would return as traders, as teachers, as allies to every species they had ever oppressed. They would build a coalition so vast and so powerful that they would find themselves surrounded by enemies they had created through their own cruelty. And when the time was right, humanity would reveal itself, not to destroy them but to offer them a choice. "We have 300 years of patience left in us," said. "That should be more than enough." The human return to the Milky Way began not with weapons or warships. It began with a single trading vessel appearing at the edge of space, carrying medical supplies that could cure diseases they had suffered from for centuries. Captain Greg Palmer stood on the bridge of the New Horizon, watching the alien delegation board his ship. His appearance had been altered by holographic technology, so advanced that even close examination would not reveal his true nature. He looked like a member of a species called the traders from a distant corner of the galaxy that no one had ever heard of. "Welcome aboard," Greg said in perfect, his voice filtered through a translator that added subtle alien tones. "I understand your people have been suffering from the Gray Plague." The lead, a tall being covered in green scales, nodded slowly. "The plague has killed millions. Our scientists have worked for generations to find a cure. They have failed." Greg gestured to a row of sealed containers along the wall of the cargo bay. "Inside these containers is enough medicine to cure every infected person on your home world. We offer it freely, with no conditions attached." They stared at him in disbelief. No one in the galaxy gave anything for free, especially not those who had conquered the 3,000 years ago and still treated them as second-class citizens. "Why would you do this?" the lead asked. Greg smiled behind his holographic mask. "Because we believe that kindness is more powerful than cruelty, because we know what it feels like to be threatened with extinction, and because we hope that someday when we need friends, you will remember that we were friends to you first." The medicine worked. Within a year, the Gray Plague was eradicated from worlds. The story spread quickly through the underground networks of conquered species across the galaxy. They had appeared from nowhere, offering salvation to those who had given up hope. More ships followed the New Horizon. They visited a species of brilliant engineers who had been forced to build weapons for the military. They visited a race of telepaths who had been enslaved as interrogators and spies. They visited dozens of other species, each one nursing old wounds and older grudges against their masters. To each of them the Mysterious offered the same gifts: technology to improve their lives, medicine to heal their sick, knowledge to advance their understanding of the universe, and always the same gentle message: We have no love for the, neither should you. Greg's first officer, Diana, managed the complex network of contacts and alliances that the humans were building. She spent her days in a communications center hidden deep within the New Horizon, coordinating with dozens of other human ships scattered across the galaxy. They have agreed to install our software into the military network, she reported to Greg one evening. Within 5 years, we will have access to every one of their defense systems. And their agents have infiltrated the highest levels of government. Half of the Arbiter's personal advisors are secretly working for us. Diana paused, studying the data on her screen. They have no idea what is happening. They see thee as harmless traders. They do not know we even exist. Greg nodded. This was the plan that Admiral Cole had designed 200 years ago. Not a war of weapons, but a war of patience. Not destruction, but conversion. One by one, the subjects of the Empire were being turned into allies of humanity. In the Andromeda colonies, the shipyards worked constantly. The Liberation Fleet had grown to 500 vessels, each one carrying weapon systems that made technology look like children's toys. The quantum fold drives had been refined and improved. A ship could now travel from Andromeda to the Milky Way in less than an hour. Admiral Cole was 120 years old now, kept alive by longevity treatments that had become routine in the colonies. His body was strong, but he knew his time was limited. He wanted to see the plan completed before he died. His great-granddaughter, newly commissioned Ensign Amy Cole, found him on the observation deck of the Fleet Command Station. "Grandfather," she said softly, "the Council wants to know if we should proceed to the next phase." Turned to look at her. Amy was 22 years old, with her mother's dark hair and her father's determined eyes. She represented the 4th generation of humans born in exile, children who had never known Earth but who carried its memory in their hearts. "What do you think, Amy?" he asked. "Should we go back?" Amy considered the question carefully. She had grown up hearing stories about Earth, about the great escape that had saved humanity from extinction. But those were just stories to her. The Andromeda colonies were her home. "I think we should," she finally said. "Not for revenge, not for conquest, but because there are people suffering under rule who need our help, because there are species being threatened with the same extinction we escaped, because if we have the power to stop evil, we have the responsibility to use it." Smiled. "You sound like your great-grandmother. She said almost the same thing the day we left Earth." He walked to the communication console and activated the fleet-wide channel. "All ships, this is Admiral Cole. Begin preparations for Operation Homecoming. In 30 days, we return to the Milky Way." The message spread through the colonies like wildfire. 20 billion humans had waited 3 centuries for this moment. They had built their civilization, raised their families, lived their lives, all while knowing that someday they would go back. Someday they would face the ones who had tried to destroy them. That someday had finally arrived. In the Milky Way, they continued their endless search for the vanished humans. They had no idea that humanity was already among them, hiding behind holographic masks and false identities. They had no idea that their own subjects had been turned into spies and saboteurs. They had no idea that the greatest fleet in galactic history was about to appear on their doorstep. High Arbiter the Fourth, great-grandson of the one who had pressed the button, received a routine report on the anniversary of the human extinction. It contained the same information as every other year. No sign of human survivors. No evidence of human activity. The extinction was complete and total. He signed the report without reading it and went back to his other duties. In 300 days, he would learn how wrong that report had been. Greg Palmer stood on the bridge of the New Horizon, watching the stars through his viewport. 300 years of planning, 300 years of patience, 300 years of waiting. "Diana," he said quietly, "send a message to the fleet. Tell them we are ready. The final phase of humanity's return was about to begin. High Arbiter the Fourth stood in the grand hall of the palace, surrounded by thousands of dignitaries from across the Confederation. The day had been declared a galactic holiday. 300 years ago, his great-grandfather had saved civilization from the human threat. Today, the entire empire would celebrate that victory. Musicians played ancient songs of triumph. Dancers performed traditional celebrations of conquest. Speakers recited poems praising the wisdom and strength of the people. Everything was perfect. And then the screens went dark. Every communication display in the palace flickered and died. The music stopped. The dancers froze. For a moment, there was only confused silence. Then the screens came back to life, showing a face that No had seen in 3 centuries. A human face. Admiral Cole looked directly into the camera. He was 140 years old, his hair white and his face lined with age, but his eyes were sharp and clear. He wore the uniform of the human colonial fleet, decorated with medals that they could not identify. "People of the Milky Way," he said. His voice was calm and measured, the voice of a man who had waited a very long time for this moment. 3 centuries ago, the Confederation attempted to exterminate humanity. They believed they had succeeded. They were wrong. The message played on every frequency, in every language, across every inhabited world in the galaxy. Billions of beings stopped what they were doing and watched. "We did not flee out of weakness," continued. "We fled because we refused to become what you feared we were. We refused to let your genocide turn us into. For 300 years, we have lived in exile. We have built a new civilization in another galaxy. We have developed technologies that make yours look primitive, and we have prepared for this day." Stared at the screen in horror. Around him, the celebration had dissolved into chaos. Officials were shouting into communicators, demanding information. Military commanders were rushing to their posts. The carefully planned ceremony had become a scene of panic. "We know everything," said. "We know about the 17 species you exterminated before you found Earth. We know about the observation stations you hid behind our moon. We know about the extermination protocols stored in your military computers. We have studied your crimes for 300 years." The image on the screen changed. It now showed space, specifically the space around Prime, the home world of the Confederation. Stars glittered in the background, peaceful and unchanged. Then the Liberation Fleet arrived. 700 ships emerged from quantum-fold space simultaneously. They appeared in perfect formation, surrounding the planet in a sphere of metal and firepower. Each ship was larger than anything they had ever built. Each ship carried weapons that could crack a planet in half. Felt his legs go weak. He grabbed the arm of his chair to keep from falling. "Your weapons cannot harm us," continued. "Your defenses cannot stop us. We could end your civilization in an hour, but we will not." The military was already responding. Defense platforms powered up. Warships launched from orbital stations. A fleet of 300 vessels moved to intercept the human formation. On the bridge of the flagship Resolution, Admiral Cole watched the approaching fleet with something like pity. "They are sending everything they have," Captain Cole reported from her station. 300 warships, 12,000 fighters, all planetary defense systems are online." "Let them fire first," said. "I want the whole galaxy to see what happens." The fleet opened fire. Thousands of energy beams and missiles streaked toward the human formation. It was the largest concentration of firepower the Confederation had ever deployed. The human ships did not move. They did not raise shields. They simply sat there as the wall of destruction approached. And then, at the last moment, every single weapon stopped. Energy beams dissipated. Missiles went dead in space. The entire attack simply ceased to exist. "What happened?" demanded. His military commanders had no answer. Someone whispered, The trading species. They gave the new software for our systems they must have. Realization dawned on the Arbiter's face. That had never existed. The friendly traders who had appeared from nowhere, offering gifts and kindness, had been humans in disguise. For 100 years, they had been preparing for this moment. Cole appeared on the screens again. Your weapons have been neutralized by software our agents installed in your systems decades ago. Your military intelligence has been compromised by species you conquered and mistreated for. Your subjects have been waiting for this day almost as long as we have. Across the galaxy, the allies humanity had cultivated over the past century made their move. The blockaded all supply routes. Cargo ships carrying food and fuel were turned back or captured. Within days, the Confederation would begin to starve. The shut down the communication relays they had been forced to build and maintain for centuries. Commanders could no longer coordinate their forces. Each world was now isolated, cut off from central command. The revealed that half of the Confederation's senior military officers were actually their intelligence operatives. They had been recruited years ago, promised freedom for their people in exchange for their loyalty to humanity. In a single day, the Confederation went from the dominant power in the galaxy to a helpless giant, surrounded by enemies it had created through its own cruelty. Slumped in his chair, his empire was crumbling around him, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Instead of destruction, said, his voice softer now, we offer you a choice. Dismantle your military, release your subject species. Submit to judgment for your crimes against sentient life. Do this and you will be allowed to survive. Refuse and watch as everything you built turns against you. The message ended. The screens returned to their normal displays, showing news feeds filled with chaos and confusion. The celebration of the human extinction had become the day of the defeat. On the bridge of the Resolution, Cole allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. 300 years, 4 generations, countless sacrifices and endless patience. And now, finally, it was done. Grandfather, Amy Cole said, standing beside him, what happens now? Looked out at the stars, at the planet below, at the fleet that humanity had built during their long exile. Now we do the hardest thing of all, he said. We show them mercy. The first human ships began descending toward Prime. They carried not weapons but diplomats, not soldiers but judges, not conquerors but liberators. Humanity had returned, and they had returned as something they had never imagined they could become. Something better than revenge. The trials lasted for 20 years. Every crime they had committed was documented, examined, and judged, not by humanity alone, but by a coalition of every species they had wronged over 10,000 years of empire. The courtroom was located on a neutral world, chosen specifically because it had no history with either humanity or the. Representatives from 300 species filled the gallery, watching as witness after witness came forward to describe what had been done to their people. They spoke of how their home world had been conquered and their culture suppressed. They described generations of forced labor, building weapons they were forbidden to use in their own defense. They explained how their telepathic children had been taken from their families and trained as tools of interrogation and control. And species that no longer existed were represented by whatever records had survived. The 16 names carved into history, each one representing billions of lives cut short by fear. Ambassador Cole, great-great-granddaughter of the admiral who had led the Liberation Fleet, served as humanity's representative on the tribunal. She was 35 years old, born in the Andromeda colonies but raised on stories of Earth and the Great Escape. We do not seek vengeance, she said in her opening statement. Vengeance would make us no better than those we oppose. We seek justice. We seek truth. We seek to build a future where no species ever has to face what humanity faced 300 years ago. The evidence against them was overwhelming. Archived recordings from their own observation stations showed the extermination of species after species. Internal communications revealed that the decisions had been made coldly and deliberately, without remorse or hesitation. High Arbiter IV was brought before the tribunal in chains. He was an old man now, broken by the collapse of everything he had believed in. His empire was gone. His military was disbanded. His people were learning the truth about what their leaders had done in their name. "I was told the humans were dangerous," he said in his defense. "I was told they would destroy us if we did not destroy them first. I was following the wisdom of my ancestors." Looked at him with something that was not quite pity and not quite contempt. "Your ancestors made the same excuse," she said. "Every tyrant in history has claimed to be acting in self-defense. Every genocide has been justified as necessary for survival. We have heard these words before. They did not excuse your crimes then, and they do not excuse them now." The tribunal deliberated for 3 months. In the end, they reached a verdict that surprised many observers. The species would not be destroyed. They would not be enslaved or confined to their home world. Instead, they would be given a choice. Those who had directly participated in the exterminations would face imprisonment. Those who had known and done nothing would face public acknowledgement of their failure. And those who were innocent, including the generations born after the crimes were committed, would be welcomed as equal members of the new Galactic Assembly. Admiral Cole did not live to see the end of the trials. He passed away peacefully at the age of 162, surrounded by his children and great. His last words were a message for who would deliver the closing statement to the assembly. "Tell them we forgive," he said. "Tell them we remember. Tell them we are human." Stood before the newly formed Galactic Assembly on the day the verdict was announced. 300 species looked up at her, waiting to hear what humanity would say. 320 years ago," she began, "my ancestors stood on a dying world and made an impossible choice. They could have fought. They could have unleashed every weapon in their arsenal and taken as many with them as possible. They chose not to." She paused, looking out at the sea of faces, sat beside, shared tables with species that had been enemies for were now sitting together in peace. They chose to survive without becoming monsters. They chose to remember without being consumed by hatred. They chose to return not as conquerors, but as liberators. In the gallery, an ancient named listened with tears streaming down his face. He was the same one who had found the human plaque floating in space 3 centuries earlier. Longevity treatments shared by humanity had kept him alive all these years, giving him the chance to see this moment. He finally understood what those strange symbols had meant. "We will return, and we will remember." "They pressed their button too late," continued. "But that is not why they lost. They lost because they never understood what humanity truly was." She stepped forward, her voice rising with passion. "They saw our wars and thought us violent. They saw our divisions and thought us weak. They saw our conflicts and thought us dangerous. They never saw our capacity for patience, for forgiveness, for building something greater than ourselves." The assembly was silent. Every being in the room understood that they were witnessing history. "We are humanity. We forgive, but we do not forget. We build, but we do not conquer. We return, but we do not destroy. And we will never, ever be too late again." The Galactic Assembly, the new charter that day. It established principles that would govern relations between species for generations to come. No exterminations, no forced conquests, no observation stations watching and waiting to destroy civilizations that developed too quickly. Humanity took its place in the new order not as rulers, but as guardians. Their fleet remained the most powerful in the galaxy, but it was used to protect rather than to threaten. Their technology was shared freely, lifting all species toward a better future. The colonies in Andromeda continued to grow. Some humans chose to stay there, building new worlds far from the galaxy that had tried to destroy them. Others returned to the Milky Way, settling on planets their ancestors had only dreamed of reaching. And Earth, the burning ruin that had been left behind 3 centuries ago, was slowly restored. Human engineers worked for decades to repair the damage. New oceans were created. New forests were planted. New cities rose from the ashes of the old. Cole stood on the surface of the rebuilt Earth 50 years after the trials ended. She was an old woman now, but she had lived to see her ancestors' home restored. "We made it," she whispered to the wind. "We actually made it." Behind her, children played in fields of green grass. Above her, ships from 100 different worlds passed through the sky. Around her, a civilization that had been sentenced to death had instead found immortality. They had pressed their button too late. They had destroyed a planet, but they had failed to destroy a people. And in failing, they had accidentally created something they never imagined was possible. A humanity that had transcended revenge. A humanity that had chosen mercy over murder. A humanity that had proven, once and for all, that the measure of a species is not how they treat their enemies when they are weak, but how they treat them when they have won. The button had been pressed too late, and because of that, humanity was here to stay. Forever,